All right, tonight we got a special guest. We got Charlotte Kosa. She's a lead investigator for California Holics. And also, too, she is an award-winning writer. She's a documentary filmmaker, just like Phil. So these Phil and Charlotte both have something in common there. She's a photographer and a digital creator. Now, Charlotte, my very first question to you is how did you get so interested in the paranormal?
My house is haunted. So I've been
Uh,
seeing stuff in my house since I was a kid. My parents told me I had a vivid imagination, but I knew I was seeing stuff, and that's where it started. I can remember as young as 3 years old seeing shadow people in my bedroom. So
yeah,
that's back a long way.
what, where, why was it haunted? And what's the history to that place?
Um, my mother happens to be sensitive, so this was all Riverland at one time, and like in my dining room, there's a gentleman that's kind of crazy in that he had fallen. He had been fishing, and he had fallen and unalived himself. Essentially, he bled out, and so I think that's where the opening is. Into this house. So because I'm sensitive and my mother was sensitive, it was just drawing stuff in to the house all this time.
So you sort of like caused a portal or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You can
What?
feel it if you walk to my front door. My fireplace is where it's at. You can feel it. You can feel the breeze from the portal coming down the hallway.
Also in your resume, it says you're a documentary filmmaker.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
Phil, Phil right here, our co-host, he's also too a documentary filmmaker, and he's won some awards and stuff like that. So, how did you get involved in something like that? And what was the documentary that you were involved in?
I did some filming. I did a thing about my dad, and because my dad and my grandfather have a very colorful history. My grandfather fought in World War I in France, and so I decided I wanted to do something with him. So I recorded him, on the digital voice recorder and all that. And then I thought, well, I want to put a documentary together about him. And then my dad joined the Coast Guard at 17 during World War II. He used to patrol the beaches in North Carolina. So he had a lot of stories about being on patrol and being 17 years old out there. So that's what I started to do. I started to record them, and then I started to film them. And we actually went to North Carolina to film. And then when we were over in France, I was out in those areas where my grandfather had fought. But my grandfather also chased Pancho Villa through Mexico.
Oh, okay. And
So
also General Patton Jr. was also too chasing Pancho Villa,
yeah.
but at that time I think he was a captain at
Mhm,
that.
mhm.
Yeah.
And then of course my paranormal team. I mean, this just goes hand in hand. Right now I'm currently working on a documentary about all the old hotels up in the Gold Country.
Okay.
So we're going to be putting that together too. But that, I went through high school. Actually, I didn't have any intention of doing anything with ghosts. You go through a period where you reach your teens and then it doesn't matter anymore, because you're busy doing other stuff. And so I went through that period, and then I ended up working in Woodland. And all of a sudden, my radar went boom because the place I was working at the newspaper was right next to the Woodland Opera House. So all my radar went the whole time, and so that's what got me back into it. You got me
I
back to
think
looking
I
at stuff.
did an investigation at the Opera House in Woodland.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty.
that's very active place, man. And so that's what started. And then I got back into paranormal investigating. In fact, I was filming another team. We were doing a monthly show on public access in Woodland. I was filming another paranormal team at the time.
I'm gonna pass this on over to Phil and Zandine because I know they've got something to ask you,
Yes, sir.
especially Phil because he did a really nice documentary about the El Paso Heights and stuff.
Okay, cool.
Hey, Charlotte.
Hey,
I'm just curious, how long did your grandfather live? How old was he when he finally passed?
92.
92. So, like, what year did you start recording him? What year? Because I'm
My
just
dad
curious.
actually started the audio because he wanted to get his stories down. My grandfather was Hungarian. That was one of the issues, too. So the first 5 months that my dad recorded him was all in Hungarian, which didn't do me any good because I don't speak. So I
Oh,
sat down with him about 10 years before he passed away. and got all his stories and everything from him. He was sharp. He was sharp till the day he died. He never had any kind of dementia or anything. So he knew his stories down pat when it happened, as it occurred. So it was really cool. Then I went back through and, of course, did the research on it to double check everything. He ended up with he never got he never got an award from the Army. What is that award they get when they're injured?
Oh, Purple Heart.
Yeah. And it happened to him. He was in a trench, and he reached back, and he felt something rip his hand open. And he looked at almost half his hand was gone. So we picked up the parts from the hand, and it was an exploded grenade. Got him. And he looked at his hand and grabbed what was left of his hand, and then he tried to find a medic. And the reason why he never got the Purple Heart or anything for that is, this is right in the middle of combat. This happened. And the reason why he never got the Purple Heart is because he ended up going to a French medic.
Yeah,
sewn back.
You'd be surprised how many men were injured back then that didn't get this Purple Heart until long after the war. Was it Michael Vernon was injured at Iwo Jima, and they didn't give him his Purple Heart until the 1980s.
Yeah,
it was just they weren't on the ball with those kind of things. So you would have started recording him in the early 1990s, or
no, it was more like the early 1980s. I started doing it.
Early 1980s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think he died around 84 when he passed.
So when did you put that documentary together, and what's it called?
It's still kind of sitting here. I'm trying to find someone who will take it. You know what I mean? I've been trying to think, like this place called Sacramento thing that they do. I've been trying to maybe get submitted over there. But it's called I call it my father's keeper is what I call it, because it's between my grandfather and my father, guarding the land, guarding the U.S. during those two major wars.
That's awesome. Yeah, I won the place called Sacramento Film Festival in 2015. Yeah. That's that was the first one I won. Was Death of Del Paso, but that's
awesome. And my dad, he patrolled. He was only 17, lied about his age going in, and he joined the Coast Guard because he figured he was safe joining the Coast Guard. But they put him on patrol these beaches, and his stories about the beach patrols. It was only him. He had 2 bullets. Is all they gave him to walk these long beaches in North Carolina. And back then there were blackouts. So there were no lights or anything, and there was like a phone mid-wave to check in on, and that was it. And then he had stories about like the Navy blip guys feeling sorry for him when he was walking in the fog, and he'd hear a noise above him, and he'd see this arm thing come down with a coffee on it.
What was that?
That was from the Navy, coffee from the Navy blips.
Oh, okay.
So they felt sorry for him because he was out there walking in the fog and stuff. And so he had some interesting stories. He was on LST. He had he had night duty all the time on the LST and all that stuff. And he talks about seeing German submarines off the coast of North Carolina. The stories are incredible.
It's funny. Back then, you could join at 17 if your parents signed away. That happened to a couple of my relatives. It was the 15-year-olds that had to lie about their ages, and there were a few of those guys that you hear those amazing stories about. Some guys that even they found out about, and then they removed them from battle once they had already fought, like 25, 30 missions, and they were already combat decorated vets with blood on their hands, and it's like, oh, now you can't fight, because you're only 16. It's like,
you know how dads are. My dad was always doing things 10 times better than he actually did, in the past, make himself look good. So, so it was interesting to talk to my dad. I still have the tapes here, and then I started filming him. By the time my grandfather was too old, I was able to get at least about 35 minutes of footage of him because he was old at that point. But at least I managed to get that because then he verified the stories that he told me, and he always had a thing about donkey salami, from being over in Mexico, because he when we went to Hungary because he's Hungarian, and they would serve us salami in the morning, and he wanted to make sure it wasn't donkey salami because he remembers, because he loved horses, so he had a huge respect for mules and horses and donkeys and things like that. And when he was in Mexico and found out that they were serving the troops donkey salami, he had a fit over it, and so he was always that way towards the end.
I can only imagine. But I mean, I remember an episode of All in the Family from the 70s when they were talking about buying horse meat and because it was legal in New Jersey but not legal in New York, and that was the
Yeah.
70s. So,
Yeah.
but
Absolutely.
so
You're listening.
what other documentaries have you done
I've been
besides?
working at just California Hots. We were doing once we left the other team and started going on our own. We were doing, like I said, weekly shows. We were doing small documentaries, about the different places we were ghost hunting. Like the ghost hunter will do that. I mean, that's what we
Yeah.
do because we want to document everything. So that's what I've been working on primarily is just working on the documentaries for my team. After that, people don't
What
realize how much work goes into putting together a documentary or a show. I mean, it's
Oh yeah.
crazy.
Oh yeah, yeah. The first one I did was took me 3 months, and that was only a 10-minute film for a
Yeah.
place called Sacramento in 2015. And then the second one I did, which PBS picked up for 2 years, that took me
Nice.
2 years.
Yeah.
2 years to make. It was 50 minutes runtime, and then they forced me to cut it down to 30 minutes, and then before they would run it, and then Sacramento Tree Foundation had to raise $30,000 for an insurance policy for them to accept it. And that's the other part of the business that people don't talk about is
Right.
There's the creative aspect, and then there's the cover your rear end aspect of
Yeah.
it, insurance and everything else.
And then I went through, I had to retire because I'm a journalist, and I had to retire because my parents were elderly, and so I took 12 years off to take care of both of them. So a lot of stuff went on hold, at that point for that 12 years. So I'm getting back in and starting to roll and do all kinds of stuff. But I think when you think about the investigations we've done, probably about 300 investigations and between residential and commercial investigations. So it's been interesting. I have all that stuff on film. I've seen some incredible stuff out in the field. But my first love really is doing journalistic stuff, journalism stuff. That's why I have my regular radio show I do, and then I like to piddle with the documentaries. It takes that's what I'm comfortable doing.
Do you do your own editing?
Yes,
Awesome. What do you use? Adobe?
I use Adobe. Yeah, and Corel for the easier stuff because Corel seems to be really simple to use. So like for basic graphics and stuff and basic graphic work, but
Yeah.
mostly Adobe. Yeah. And I do audio work. I took audio engineering in college, so my second degree is in audio engineering.
Nice. People don't realize just how important audio is. I'd say you can have really crappy footage, and still get away with, as long as your audio is clean. But if you've got crappy audio, you don't have a movie.
Yeah, that's about what it is too. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I learned a lot with Adobe, and like I said, I'm qualified enough to go work at concerts, to run cables and all that stuff. I could be in a recording studio, but that's what I did. I veered off, and then when I was in college, I was going to go into film. I was going to go into film production and stuff, and then they didn't have any English classes open, so I took a journalism class, and then I was hooked. And that totally changed my direction. But then, like I said, once I got out and started, applying myself with ghost hunting and hearing the stories of my mom and dad, and my grandfather and stuff, I got back into using camera, getting back into that part that I want to get into. Because most of my classes I took in college for the first 2 years were film production, or and play and the stuff for plays and learning lighting and all that stuff. I took all that stuff.
So, just between two filmmakers, do you suffer the way I did back when I was really heavy into it, where you go out there and you spend 8 to 12 hours and you come back and you're lucky if you get 8 minutes?
Yep, absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
That was the torture of it all, and the setup time, and the waiting around, and then, oh God, the audio, yeah.
Oh yeah, well, ghost hunting is another thing, man, because there's a lot of battery drain. So when you're out there with those cameras, you're lucky, if you can get like you say 8 minutes worth after you're on location for 10, 15 hours because of the battery drain. You're trying to work around that battery drain all the time.
And then you got to go home for another 2 or 3 days to sift through 8 hours of footage just to pull those 8 minutes worth. And
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to pass you on to Zandine now. I've talked your ear off, but thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much.
No, Phil, you know what? You guys, you two are both award winning, and I was just sitting here lost and hearing the technique and like the journey and stuff. So please, man, ask more questions because you would, from two filmmakers, I'm hearing more relevant stuff, man. It's just like really interesting. So Would you do me the honors and please continue, my good sir?
Well, I can nerd out forever with this stuff.
Please do.
Uh,
So
and my journalism helps.
I
My
want to tell you, I'm
journalism,
up in Gold Country a lot.
yeah, yeah. There's a
I
lot of
know
cool stuff there.
Oh, your journalism helps. I'm listening.
I know Paul uses archive.org a lot. In fact, that's where I found Paul's disco footage on archive.org. But have you ever pulled anything off of there and used it for some of your?
I have used it. Yeah, I have. This research. Yes, yes, I have. You know, that's
nice.
part of what we have to do. We have to dig out all that stuff. And I think having been a journalist helped considerably with this whole thing when I got into doing, filming documentaries, because I knew where to look. I knew the places to check property records. I knew, all this stuff, because I was a crime court journalist for 8 years, and then I ended up being the editor of two papers. And then one online. I was editor for Sioux City for AOL Patch as well. I was doing that from home, but I was the editor of two papers. One of them had to be a daily paper. So I learned all that stuff.
Charlotte. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Paul.
Oh no, I just Charlotte. What are the newspapers that you work for?
Roseville Press Tribune, and that I was an editor, page editor for them, and they owned like 4 or 5 other papers. So I was also doing page editing for the other papers and page design and all that stuff. And then the Woodland Daily Democrat is where I was a city editor over there. And then I worked out in Placerville for I think 3 years out in Placerville before I had to retire and take care of my parents. And I was a GA reporter, and I handled just about anything they handed to me. I was out going all over the place. So I was having fun. And then I was the editor for Sioux and Fairfield Patch for a while.
And that's what we have in common, because I work for Costa Rica Times, and I work for 4 paranormal magazines. So Paranormal Underground magazine, Outer Limits magazine, and Phenomena magazine out of England. And another one was picked me up. I can't think of the name of it right now, but anyway, yeah. So I'm busy with my writing now. So, but anyway, I'm gonna pass it over to Phil, because Phil was going to say something, and then
Yes. Absolutely.
Oh, no, I was just as far as gathering what do they call what public domain footage or footage that you can use. People don't realize just how expensive it is to get B-roll.
Yeah.
And when it comes to or people don't realize, just if you actually try to watch a movie or even a commercial and count how many seconds between a frame change, go ahead and watch your average commercial and then count to 3, and you'll watch there'll be a frame change.
Right.
It's very rare that you find a movie that has a continuous shot longer than 3 to 5 seconds. Yep. When you do, it's normally a director really flexing his artistic muscles. There's a few great movies out there that do that, and when you pull it off well, it's a beautiful thing. But in the documentary world, anybody who's watched Ken Burns or anything else, especially when you're in the no budget realm like I am, you're out there looking for anything you can get for free. And so I even went as far as went on eBay and bought a whole bunch of 8mm film reels, and bought a machine for I think it was like $500, and converted them all to digital, and used some of that stuff in some of the smaller pieces and some of the unfinished docs that I've still got sitting on hard drives here. Just because, and I even sold some of that footage because there are places online that will buy it from you. I found a reel that was a cross-country trip that somebody took in 1943. And so it had all the old road signs exactly the way they were in 1943, which almost nobody has. And I blew them up to from 8mm to 1080, and sold a few, a couple of seconds here and a couple of seconds there, different states. Right. People bought them, type thing. But I love footage. I'm a documentary fanatic. Besides making 2 of my own that actually got released, and having a couple of unfinished works myself, I will watch a documentary on anything. Archive.org, I love, not just for gathering. I'll sit there and I've watched the one that I think Standard Oil made where that little boy makes the pirogue, the little boat. It's like from 1940, and Standard Oil Company made it, and you watch the kid actually take it down a tree and carve a boat out of a tree. And it's and then pull the old bayous, which were crystal clear back then before the oil completely destroyed the bayous. And it's black and white, but I mean, or a Seabright skiff, which was Seabright, New Jersey's version of a little rowboat, basically, and how they were made. I'll watch a documentary on chewing gum, which I had no idea has plastic in it. I'm like, what do you mean we're chewing plastic? Oh my God. Right. So I'm a complete nerd for documentaries. I've watched more than anybody else that I really know of. And so that's why I wanted to make my own. I mean, Errol Morris is my hero as far as that goes. And obviously, God, I'm having a brain fart. The guy who did Grizzly Man and
right.
Yeah. So
I find it interesting, like you say, the availability of finding the extra footage that you need is difficult. But I know there's places that sell that stuff too, and that can get pricey. Because I've gotten emails from these places that have that footage that they're going to, you know what I mean, where they have packages where you can buy so much of it and then use it and stuff. And I try not to do that because I'd rather get into archive.org and use whatever's over there. Because like you say, you put the right signs are in there, everything's in there that you're looking for.
Or music. Music used to be very difficult to get, and now with Google or YouTube, they actually have quite a bit of free music that's available. I used to actually have to go and beg musicians to let me use their music. Local musicians or people that were on YouTube and say, hey, it's for a good cause. I'm not making any money off of this. There's absolutely zero profit in it.
Right.
But I will give you screen credit if anybody actually sticks around to read the credits.
Right.
And so yeah, people don't realize just how expensive music is. Like Forrest Gump, I heard they actually they didn't want to give them the money for all that great music they used in that film when they did it, and so they cut it with the music before they showed it to the studio heads. And once they saw it, they said, okay, we'll give you the extra $2 million for that soundtrack type thing, because music is almost as expensive as having another big name actor in the movie.
Yeah. I think,
Phil, can I stop you right there?
Go ahead.
No, Phil, I wanted to tell you what you said about Forrest Gump. Ironically, Michael T, that played Bubba.
Yeah.
He actually was my manager, and when he would have me make stuff like for the show, say like WKRP, what they would do is they say, hey, look, they play me some James Brown or play me something they liked. And they said, hey, we're not going to pay for this. Can you make this right quick? So at first we used to sample. A lot of guys used to sample just because it sounded good, for rap. But then we were like, okay, so we're in there playing the shit, and programming. And so that's the way. But so it makes sense that they had already had that game down, because us, writers or people like yourself, a lot of times you don't know some of the legal things, and then they'll tell you right away, like, hey, we can't do this because X, Y, and Z. So they quickly hipped us to, anytime we want to do some little cameo, just play it right there, play a little bit different, and you don't have to worry about any of that. But it was ironic because it was Michael T from Forrest Gump that was doing that shit even before he was in the movie. He was having us, hey, no, we're not paying for that. And if you rap, he doesn't want to hear anything advertised about any company. So if you go like, whoa, I'm like Geico. Oh no, you said about no, don't, whatever. So anyway, that's just my little 2 cents.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot to mention that Zandine actually started an episode of WKRP in Cincinnati with the guy that was in Forrest Gump, Bubba. The guy who's your heart breaks for when he dies, and Tom Hanks is holding him. That's a great actor, great scene.
It was really nice with Adobe Audition when they first started to come out, because they actually had riffs that you could use and write music with. There were actual, CD of riffs. It was really sweet.
Templates, huh? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
do you like Avid?
Yes, I do. I like Avid.
Okay.
Yeah, I like SN. But yeah, I mean, the theme song for my show for California Haunts is actually written via Adobe. And then I had a travel show I was doing for a while called California Adventures before Disney came out with theirs. California Adventure thing, where we 2 of us women traveled around the state of California doing really cool stuff. I wrote that. I wrote the theme song for that off of Adobe as well. You know,
Wow.
so it's kind of nice. But now, from what I'm hearing, the guy that did those riffs is kind of upset that Adobe didn't compensate him right or something, and then there's a problem with him. But I haven't so far. Facebook was really tagging me for a while on my theme, and then they backed off after a while. I don't know why I got them to back off because I had the Adobe numbers and everything for it. But it was nice because I mean they had thousands of riffs in there.
That's
Wow.
awesome. Yeah, I had
So
messed
you
around
really
with
worked
that
Adobe,
list.
huh?
Yeah, I do.
Adobe, like you worked it in a really good way. They have to accept it. You know, that reminds me of Prince.
Yeah.
Jesse Johnson said that he went to a studio and he was expecting to see this big setup, but he said basically it was a real basic setup, like an 8-track bounced to a 2-inch. But he said that he worked and EQ'd it so good, he was putting music off. That's it, you know, that setup. So you just how you work it, I guess. You sound like you're working it, you know.
Yeah. I'm really used to Adobe. Like I said, I'll use Corel as well for easier stuff. You know, for the easier video editing, I'll use that because you can.
Okay.
You can do basic stuff with Corel. You know, to where sometimes Adobe sometimes makes it too complicated because, you know, you put it through and then you have to put it through something else to get it to format right, and then sometimes it won't format into what you're doing. So if I could take it after I'm done with Adobe, put it into Corel will format it perfectly for me. You know, as far as
Okay.
like using it on Restream in different places. So it's nice. So I have both.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Charlotte, about your
Oh,
about your paranormal investigating. I'm
yes,
kind of curious because I was talking to two former investigators, and they said that we crossed paths, HPI crossed paths with California Hunts.
yes.
I don't recall that. Did that ever happen?
Yeah, there's been a couple of times we crossed paths. In fact, I have members on the team right now that are with you guys. I think are still with you guys.
Oh, okay. Do you remember what cases they were?
There was one out in Arbuckle.
Oh, the
On that
Arbuckle.
trailer.
You did
Remember
the
that one? We did
okay,
the Arbuckle case, yeah.
the Arbuckle case.
Yeah, we
Okay.
went in after you guys did, and wow,
Okay. Yeah, that was a weird one.
that was
Oh,
an eye opener. That one. Yeah.
I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
Ah, I'll be darned. Okay. Um, and did you, uh, did you ever meet me?
We've never met at all these years. Ever.
Okay.
Just
Well,
kind of online.
I just have to ask. I'm getting kind of old. My mind's getting a little
No, you
foggy.
guys have been around as long as we have. You know, it's been a long time. You know, and yeah, we knew and I have never met. I knew Shannon,
Okay.
but and Nancy Bradley. You know, I knew all them, but I never
Yeah,
met you.
bless her heart. You know she passed away, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I was writing some of her stories for, and she used to pay me to write her stories. Yeah.
Well, tell us about this Arbuckle case. Don't leave us hanging on this, and since you both, did the same story.
Charlotte, go ahead and talk about what you found on the Arbuckle case.
It was a strange case. She thought it might be demonic. It was weird. I had worked with another client, and I want to say this, who was having similar issues as her, who had similar issues as her, to where she was dreaming about, you know, negative stuff attacking her when she was sleeping, and all this was going on. And I was actually had done a case with a client out here in Sacramento. And so when I heard about the Arbuckle case, and then the lady called us, I said, "Wow, that sounds familiar." So I had her talk to this other client of mine to see how similar it was. We go out there. We had a psychic that wanted to start up with us, and so I said, "Well, why don't you come out to the prelim? You can come with me. We'll do the walk around. You know, we'll do the interview. You know, the pre-case interview." We go walking into the garage in that place, and she freaked. She really got upset, and I said, "Well, what's going on?" She says, "Don't you see it? It's right there." And I said, "No, I don't see it." She says, "It looks like a penguin. It's about 3 feet tall. It's got really red glowing eyes." And I said, I don't see it. Well, anyway, we walked out of that garage, and she took off, never came back. It scared her that bad. So I talked to the lady again. You know, it sounded a lot like that case that we had handled out here. So I wanted her to talk to that client. So then we go out, because usually when we go out, I have 140 question questionnaire for people. Really thorough when we question. You know, we're asking about everything. that goes on with people. And so we filled all that out, and I said, okay, I've got a shaman on staff, so we'll bring the shaman out that night, see what we can do, if we can help you out with this. And so we get there that night. She hadn't gotten home yet. She left the front door open, and as I'm going in, I see this short shadow go running down the hallway. And I said, guys, it's here. It's in here. So we all get in there, start to set up, and our equipment's getting knocked over. Right? I have my mother with me. My mother's mother was a curandera in Mexico. And so my mother remembers her, chasing bad spirits and everything. So I had my mother surrounded with safety stuff. And I said, don't leave the couch. Stay right here. I don't know what we're dealing with, but it's not nice. I go into the master bedroom. We haven't even started yet. Paul, you'll appreciate this. I go into the master bedroom. I do a quick EVP session. Hi, this is Charlotte. It's 8 p.m. Pacific, blah, blah, blah day. Is there anybody in here who wants to talk to us? I play it back, and I hear a voice go, Gabriel, watch out. And I looked at my assistant, and I went, this is the angel Gabriel telling, this is something telling the angel Gabriel to watch out for what's going on here. And then the shaman showed up, and I thought, thank God. And so it went on, and then the garage was a huge focus place. I don't know what it was about that garage. And my investigators were smelling vomit out there. And at one point, one of my investigators' sons was walking by the door and heard her voice trying to lure him into that garage. Which was, I hate to say crazy, but I mean, over the top on that one. And so the shaman, we finally got to the point where the shaman started to fight that thing. And whatever it was, Paul, we ended up calling a priest to come out at the end. The shaman, and I'm not going to say who it was, because I adore her. She's still on the team. But in the middle of the fight, she wet herself.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I realized we were, even with the shaman, we were in over our heads. And I just went, okay, we're going to have to call out a priest to deal with this.
A couple of my investigators, they got scratched up, possibly by the demon. This was before now when I do investigations, I do Roman Catholic house blessings. And if they have an attachment, a basic form of exorcism is a full submersion baptism. So I do both. And I'm successful with that. When I did the Arbuckle case, I wasn't doing that yet. So a lot of stuff was happening. And yeah, if I was able to do something like that, I could have really cleansed that place. But that place, it was evil. It was just, yeah.
Animals were dying on the property and all that. And the thing is,
right, animals were dying on the property.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was all telltale on there. And the thing is that, it's weird the way the universe works because we didn't get a lot of demonic cases until the shaman came on. And it's like God or whoever is in charge of the universe said, hey, they've got someone that can fight this stuff. Let's hand them these cases. So we started to get to the point where we were doing them like all the time. And it gets real. It gets real tiring, and the pressure is incredible doing them because you're really dealing with someone's life with these things. And
we've done a lot of demon cases. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the work you do. See, whoever it is upstairs says, hey, you can do this stuff. Let's hand it off to them.
Oh my God.
But well, Arbuckle was incredible.
Zandine's been on some of our demon cases that we recently done. We did a demon case in Pleasanton, and that was just really a horrible case. The guy was just a wacko and everything else. A lot of times, it's not a demon. Sometimes it's something out of your organ, stuff. What are some of the notable cases that you've done?
As far as that stuff, we keep it pretty well secret. Secret on what we've done. I did a case out here in Salsac for a friend of mine, her house, and it had been a pot grow house, and then there had been a couple of deaths in there, and it's a good place for a demon to show up because a demon is going. Yeah, the demons look for that stuff, and so it was a demon. My associate and I chased it out of the house, ran protection around the house and stuff. Got home, sat down to do EVPs, to work on the EVPs. I ended up with scratches going down my arms with this thing. And so, of course, I had to deal with that. Go over to the Catholic Church here, get that taken care of, because they're aware of me over here, the St. Ignatius now. And then I had another one out in, and this is what, clients, like I said, we have this extensive questionnaire because, like Paul says, you don't know what you're dealing with. So what you want to do is you want to question everybody about everything to see if you can kind of figure out what's going on, if it's somebody attracting it or somebody's doing it or doing something with it. And so we went out to this house in Rockland, and it was this family, and the guy's taking me through the house, and he says, well, this has been happening, just minor things like stuff falling off the table and all this. And I said, well, how heavy is this stuff falling off the table? He said, oh, not very heavy, right? Because, my whole thing is if it's heavier than 5 pounds, then we have something else going on, And then he said, well, there's like a dark shadow that runs around the floor. And he said, but, my dog did die a few months ago. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it's the dog. I didn't give it a second thought. Did the prelim, found out from him that his daughter loved to watch Ghost Hunters and all those shows. And so she was in there with we can say provoking, she was in there with the Ouija board or whatever she was using and trying to talk to ghosts. So she was drawing stuff into the house.
We had one of the Ghost Hunters on our show. We got Brian. Oh, I can't think of his last name. Zandy, what's his last name? Brian.
Daryl Marston.
Brian.
Daryl Marston.
Oh, yeah, Daryl Marston, but we had Brian.
Brian Cano. Yeah. Brian Cano.
Yeah.
Brian Cano. Yeah.
How are you?
He's really nice guy. He's really cool. I mean, both of them are really good. I mean, they had a lot of insight. As far as the demons, yeah, like for me, it's like, people gotta have respect, but a lot of people just say demon. It's like what kind of demon? Like where from? What's his name? Invocation? It's like the more you know about like that or like what it's doing, what kind of luck is it affecting? A lot of times it could be the illnesses, it could be, the death or the sex, it's a lot of different things. And a lot of times people do look for, as probably like some kind of horned or some kind of funny looking, entity. But really,
right.
A lot of what the demon does is, it's affecting a lot of things that are really bad. And you're like, well, damn, and it's an avalanche. So, calling the demon's name. I'll go back to Solomon, controlling the demons with the, with the cedar ring, Shamden. Shamden is the king of demons as far as, most pantheons are concerned. Shamden, I had never really heard of Shamden until I started studying demonology. But, then there's the thing about Jesus, people thinking that Jesus actually used the power of demons to subdue other demons when actually he said, no, I use God's power. So, the thing about demons and people having respect or not, or just, Iraqi demons, Mesopotamian demons, Greek demons, Persian demons. I mean, there's so many pantheons and what they do. And Paul, he's heard me say this before, and it's a simple example. Like in The Exorcist, they mixed up demons. They used Pazuzu, which is a Mesopotamian demon, to affect the womb when it should have been Cassiade, who's from Enoch with the 200 fallen angels. Cassiade was in the first 10. So you had the fallen angels who turned into demons once they defected. When they made that pact, when they broke the pact of the Bikal that God had made with them before the flood, that minute they became demons to him. They became a counterfeit religions, but they became gods to the Egyptians. Uta, Uza, Anu, Gilga, so they had a whole pantheon. But if you look at it, it seems like Samyaza is one of the main angels that was a fallen angel, but became a head demon, But if you look at the way the Jewish people and the rabbis look at it, their pantheon, and how they look at Kabbalism. So
right. Well, like I said, in this case, she was egging it on, and I said, that's not really advisable. I was talking to her because you take everybody and interview them separately, because you want to get the story. And I said, it's not a good idea. I said, we don't know anything about your property yet. We don't know any of this. You moved here and you started egging this on. So investigation night rolls around, and we get out there, And
Yeah.
the investigators, I'm outside. I have my headquarters usually outside in a van, or I'm in front of the driveway, so I don't interfere with with the camera lines or anything with them. We're always on walkie-talkies and stuff. And I got investigators running up going, I just set the camera up, it got knocked over. I just got this set up, it got knocked over. And I go in the house, and in her bedroom, I can hear stuff being thrown around the bedroom.
Hmm.
And I go in there, and the chairs are knocked over in this bedroom. And I'm kind of starting to get, at this point, I'm starting to get kind of edgy, thinking, well, what the heck are we dealing with?
Any orbs? Anything? Any other physical traces of it, or
No,
just the physical? Okay.
just all the
Okay.
physical stuff. And so I looked like the president. I had 3 cell phones, and I had 3 different remote psychics on. And I said, okay, we got to figure out what the heck's going on here, because, my people are starting to get nervous inside that house. And the last one that called said, it doesn't have a face. It looks like a woman from the back, but it doesn't have a face.
Yeah.
And at that point, I got on the walkie-talkie, and I'm like, get out, we're done. We'll get the shaman in. We're in over our heads. So we get done that night. Client shows up. They went to a movie, and I'm talking to him in the driveway, and I'm saying, look, we couldn't help you tonight, but we're going to send the shaman out to deal with this, because this is beyond what we can do for you safely. I don't want my people to get hurt. And as I'm leaving, he says, oh, I have something to tell you. He says, I was testing you to see if you guys would pick this up. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And he says, well, a few days ago, my wife was doing the laundry in our laundry room, and the dryer door was ripped off and thrown across the room, off the hinges.
Whoa. Okay.
Well, that's a wonderful detail to let us know. If you
Yeah.
then the shaman would have come out. I wouldn't have put my
How
people at
convenient.
risk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was one of these deals where this thing was on the land to begin with, and I think it was the perfect storm, because the girl got in there and started conjuring stuff and trying to conjure, and it brought it out, is what I think was going on there. So yeah, the shaman took care of that one.
What I was going to say about that is, that's where the reason why I start talking about the order and the demons and different pantheons is, so a shaman has power but no authority. So it's like he doesn't have the real authority. So when I always ask people, who do you call out to when you're scared? Like, who's your God? Is it yourself? Is it a demon? Whoever that is. So if that authority isn't enough, it's not going to stop it. So for me, it's like the authority that I call out to, which is Yahweh, I've never had a problem stopping stuff with that. But if I don't know what I would do if I did, but different people, shaman, different people have different techniques. And a lot of people think that just because if you believe in God or you believe in this or that, this stuff isn't out there. Well, even my God acknowledges the solution to sorcery. It's just how much authority does it have. So if you don't know what level or what you call out to, you're never going to be able to stop it.
Exactly. I agree with you. And like
Charlotte,
we always say, even with the shaman, what we always tell them is that, let us know, because if this doesn't stop it, we're going to have to call a priest out. I mean, this is what we can do for you.
Charlotte, when HPI was at its peak, we had 50 members. And out of those 50 members, we had people who did cleansings in different special fields. We had 2 shamans, we had Buddha, we had Hindu, we had 2 Miwoks, Jewish, Greek Orthodox, and Christian. So we had it all covered, and I did the Roman Catholic. So we had it all covered. So we respect their religion. Hey, I'm Hindu. Okay, bring the Hindu cleanser.
Exactly.
You do that. So yeah, those were the good old days when we had all the cleansers. Yeah, but
I remember those
Paul,
days
good
too.
about that.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that today too before we did this. That I had at one time I had eight mediums on my staff, because they all had different talents. Like Paul says, they all did different things, and that's what you want. Like for me, I was able to tailor like different cases for different mediums.
Wow, interesting.
Okay, Charlotte, I'm going to ask you something as a paranormal investigator, and this is probably a common question that you've probably heard from many people. What do you think of orbs?
That is a tough one. If we're having activity like we were at, what is that place in Placerville that bed and breakfast in? It's over.
That's
Anyway,
my neck of the woods. Let me see where. What street?
it's I forget what street. I haven't been out there in a little while. It begins with an S. I forget what it is. And we were
It.
out there where they claimed that they would see a gentleman standing there all the time.
Huh.
Well, of course, we picked up an orb in motion. So
Huh.
when I'm looking at orbs and stuff, I'm thinking, okay, if it happens, if I see the orb somewhere where somebody has witnessed an apparition, then I'm more than apt to believe it. But I have seen a lot of dust orbs as well. So I'm on the fence, to be honest. And well, in the opera house, we got a great orb, like where there's supposed to be that gentleman that's supposed to look, or whatever he is, a manager on the stairwell there, when you're going up.
Yeah.
We got an orb in motion up there, like it was coming down towards the investigator.
And Charlotte, I'm going to do it real quickly here. Phil and Zandine's heard this story about 100 times, but I'm going to tell you real quick.
Okay.
Okay, we had this one case where Emily was draining the energy from the occupants. So they would feel fatigued, tired, and everything else. One of my investigators says, Paul, I need to sit down. I feel like I'm ready to faint. And I said, wow, I wonder if Emily, the ghost, is draining the energy from you. And I said, Emily, if you're listening to me, I said, kiss him on the mouth. And three of us snap a photo and we get an orb on his mouth. And then we said, Emily, this is great. I said, if you love him, why don't you sit on his lap? And then we take a picture and there's an orb hovering over his lap. That shows me right there intelligent movement. So a lot of times when I do cases, I'll place my hand up against the wall and I said, okay, if you're a real ghost, appear by my hand.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll get this orb right on my hand.
Yeah.
That shows intelligent movement. That's what I go for because yeah, it's gonna be almost anything. It could be dust, it could be skin flakes, lint, dewdrops, light refractions, whatever.
Yeah.
If you're
I agree 100%. It has to be attached to something, just either a command or it's someone that people see standing there all the time. And Shafsky House. It was the Shafsky House. That's what it was. And
the Shafsky. Okay. Okay.
Shafsky.
You know, right at the other end is where the Dalai Lama used to go. That deep cave they have that's like been there. But so they can. But as far as the orbs, Placerville, Pollock Pines. I go up on Ice House Road. I go up like deep in the mountains. That's some of the best orbs you're gonna find. Like, and off the side of the road as you're going up 50, you're going past the Salt House. The Salt House right up there. Yeah. Before you get to Pollock Pines. So some of the best orbs pictures I found, but also I found that when the jets go by, they leave a residue that covers you. At first I was thinking they make orbs because of the chemicals, but something that they fall on top of, it brings a bunch of them out. But as far as the ones that are active, Paul sent me the houses where I've actually seen the orbs, the active ones that go to a stand, knock it over. You actually see it happen, or you see it move a sign. So, and then I saw some other investigators where they have the orbs that pushed some of these beer taps, and I just started saying, what do they have in common? Like two doors are opening at one time at these other investigators' investigation, and it was these orbs. So I was like, all orbs aren't equal. Some are charged. And I see some thick, like chalky white ones. Paul will tell you, Yvonne's house, she had like millions of orbs, different types, and they were driving her crazy. So, but I think this area right here, like you said, some of them could be dust, some of them can be, whatever. But I think, in Gold Country, there's something going on. I don't know.
We used to have a house up in Montague, up north.
Okay. All right.
It was by the airport. There was a cemetery by this airport. The house was on the other side of all this. And we're going, this is like 3 a.m. We get up there. My mom, dad, and I, we go up there, and he's already in the house. Or he's going into the house. We're still in the pickup, and we're just like right adjacent with the house to our left. I saw this orb go shoot through the car. And
wow.
I said, did you see that? Did you see that? And my mother goes, no, I didn't see that. So we pull up to the house, and my dad's standing out front, and he looks really, really white-faced. And I said, well, what's wrong? He says, I just saw some man walk through the house and disappeared.
Hey, I got a question for Charlotte and Zandine. Pollock Pines. We did an investigation at a movie site, a place where they actually made movies, and it was called Ghost Mountain Ranch. Have you guys ever
Yeah.
Ghost
I've never
Mountain?
been there, but I've heard of it.
I go there. Man, I pass by there all the time, Paul. Going to Slide Park. I've seen that, man. I've seen that thing a thousand times. But I haven't really explored it though, because I saw, you pass by. How Pony Express runs is really narrow, and all the stuff is to the left or right, and you see people turn up there. But you know that if you go right down the street to Camino, where there is that old hotel that you might be investigating, I'm pretty sure. It's that old hotel. There's a lot from one of those Apple places. You know how Apple Hill has those places. This one is
Right.
it's much further up in Camino, but they have the best view up there, Paul, of the whole. I mean, are you talking about wide open sky? I mean, and it's haunted, So the people see apparitions like those old time with the turn of the century clothes and corsets on. They see that shit up there all the time. And that.
Oh, and over at Ghost Mountain Ranch, I did an investigation with Nancy Bradley and her husband, Robert Reppert. And
Okay.
I used the night vision goggles, and we saw this huge mass, and it was walking towards us. And this was over at Ghost Mountain Ranch. So if you ever go there,
Okay.
and again, man, you
I
should
need,
try to
I
pick
need
up.
to start. Yeah, you know what? I need to
I'm
just
trying
go
to go up
because
there.
at nighttime, I mean, a lot of times where I'm at, I'm damn near walking distance from. I could just like, it's crazy, but it's so much stuff up there, you know. And as far as what do you think about that? I mean, this is off of Bigfoot. I wasn't really a Bigfoot person. I'm not like, but when I get up there, as you go up to Slide Park and some of these 10-mile trails, the trees are broken like classically, like they say, they would be. I'm like, it's pretty close to home,
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
Sierra Nevada mountains, they have stories of Bigfoot and they have stories on werewolves. Supposedly, there's
Uh-uh.
werewolves there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was one section, and I was going to go up there, and I can't think of the town, but there's a little town, and they said that there's a Bigfoot family out there, and some people have wind up missing. They've never been seen again. So it's like, I don't know if I want to wind up missing, but now, Charlotte, do you do Bigfoot? Do you do UFOs?
I have team members that do that. I have team members that do that. Have you ever looked into the rebobs?
Oh yes, Napa Reeboks. We did an investigation over there, and also too, did you know there was another cryptid with the Reeboks, and it's called Chuck Chuck. I think yeah, it's called Chuck Chuck. This Chuck Chuck, it has a face of a bird and a body of Bigfoot, and it hangs out with the Reeboks.
I want to see that. Yeah, we're supposed to go up and do the rebobs in a couple weeks to check it
Yeah,
out.
we
And I do
did.
have people. I have a couple that live up in Placerville that are my my Bigfoot hunters and stuff like that. They do that stuff.
Okay,
Uncle Red,
Google Napa Reeboks Chuck Chuck.
Okay. Okay. I'll
Chuck,
Google
Chuck.
that.
Yeah, Chuck
What
Chuck.
about the red-haired giants? What about the red-haired giants up there too?
Yeah, the red-haired giants. Yeah.
All those mounds. When you go in Nevada, I mean, I had never really gone through that. I had to drive to get my son. Like we were going like super far, and going through Nevada, we did a car. So I was by myself, and I saw all these big giant mounds, and it just looked so humongous,
See,
And I thought, yeah,
Green Valley Vortex. That's up by Auburn. That's where they supposedly found some bones of the red-haired giants. And also,
that's close.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. On man, this place. Okay, when we did an investigation there, I get excited just thinking about it. But they have there were so many people. That place was a hospital. You'll see a hospital there. Well, now it's a school, and there's cult members there. So they wear strange little robes, and then when you walk past them, they go hello, hello, and you're like, oh, okay, hello, you know. And there's a cemetery there and these strange trees that connect like this. So you walk underneath the trees, you see a cemetery. The cemetery are people who died of TB, tuberculosis. And the school used to be a hospital, and it's very haunted. And this was in the Auburn newspaper. But these two high school boys went up into the Green Valley vortex and they said a UFO landed, and out from the UFO came two aliens who were robots and were chasing them. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, this is actually in the newspaper.
The one where they stayed in the tree, the guy stayed up in the tree all night and they were throwing rocks and shit at it, and it was weird. Yeah, go ahead, Paul. That's crazy.
So they got that. So you got the, and then supposedly Bigfoot hangs out there. So Charlotte Zandine, that's in your territory.
Yep.
If you get over to Green Valley, Texas, if you want the address, I can give
Yeah.
you the
Yeah,
address.
that would be cool. Yeah, we would love to do that. I'm going to
Yeah.
share with you something. I'm going to share with everybody. And usually, if I have a guest on my regular show, if we're talking UFOs and stuff, I share it. We don't. My producer and I have known each other for years, and we don't know what happened to this day. Okay, I'm not saying we got abducted. I'm not saying it was a time slip. I have no clue. Now, Paul, I don't know how long you've lived in the area. Highway 99, all the overpasses used to be covered with vines and stuff back when I was a kid. And so working late as an editor for newspaper, I used to get off at like 10 or 11 at night, and we would go to Elk Grove to go see the midnight movies.
Elk Grove, okay.
That could start my weekend, right? So we're driving, and as we're driving, it got really weird because I'm looking out the windows of the car, and all the city lights have disappeared. And I'm going, we should be seeing, city lights straight out there just about. There's only a couple spots. No city lights at all. And I look up at the overpass, and the overpass has vines all over it. Okay? And I looked at I asked my friend, I said, are you seeing this? And she says, yeah, I don't know what this is. Okay, next thing we know, it's an hour later, we're in Gulf.
So you have some missing time?
Yeah.
In Gulf. How do you get from Elk Grove to Gulf? Wait, that.
Well,
Yeah.
Here's
And that's what happens. They drop you so far away.
Yeah.
They drop you like to them, it's nothing.
And here's the funny part. Galt in 1883, a horse carriage with two men on it were passing this one area near Pelter Bridge near Galt. And they actually saw a UFO, and you can look this up. I'm not making this shit up. The UFO landed, two aliens came out, and they were carrying something that looked like an egg. And they were approaching the two men. They totally freak out, jump on the horse carriage, and take off. Then later on, like a couple of years later in Sacramento, they see this airship in the sky. And we're talking about the 1800s.
Okay, I get right. Paul, 1898? What was it, 1898? What year was that?
I can look it up real
Just
fast.
because, the reason why I say that is because George Van Tassel, when they told him, hey, what aliens, why would they talk to you? He says, well, in 1898, Chicago had 1,000 witnesses. It was a UFO airship right there for everybody to see. I looked it up. It was true, but that could have been the same flap. Who knows? Like, it sounds like you're talking about the same time, but it was 1898.
Yeah.
The year in just a second because I'm looking it up right now. Here we go. Oh my God. Oh, hey, guys, keep on talking. Oh, here it is. 1896 Lodi. Local
Right.
retiree traces reported UFO landing in 1896 Lodi. And that shortly after that, in Sacramento, California, people are looking up in the sky and they see what looked like an airship. There was no airships around during that time.
Okay. They took pictures. The newspaper they actually Chicago. You can look that case up too to compare because the same deal. And they drew a picture of it because that's basically what they could do then. But I find it pretty ironic,
Yeah, I mean,
that's why I asked you what year, 1896. So Lodi and then Sacramento, huh?
Yeah. And Peltier Bridge, as you go down towards Lodi, we investigated Peltier Bridge. That place is super spooky because one, that was near where the UFO landed. The guys were carrying the egg-shaped thing, and also two, there was a young lady that was in the car with her boyfriend, and in the back seat of the car was his cousin. They drive to an area. We actually drove to that area, and we got an EVP of a woman screaming. And they parked the car, and they were trying to be intimate with her forcefully. And she wasn't going for it. So the cousin pulled out a knife and stabbed her like 38 times.
Wow.
Yeah. And they dragged her body and then they threw her over this little ledge and stuff like that. And they say that her ghost haunts Peltier Bridge. So if you ever go in that area.
I was just thinking when you were talking about that bridge in Downeyville.
Yeah.
Did you guys go there? Because you know they hung her from that woman from that bridge, and it's weird because the bridge will be it'll be really calm even though that river's fast. You can walk across that bridge; it's very stable, and then all of a sudden it starts shaking when you're standing there. Like
You-
maybe she's
Wow.
swinging from the bridge.
Pretty scary.
This is a Downeyville Bridge.
Yeah, Downeyville.
Huh, I never been to that one.
Yeah.
They had
You'll be standing there, everything is calm. There's no, of course, you would expect the river to maybe make it shake, but nothing. It's just really calm, and all of a sudden the bridge starts to shimmy,
holy cow.
like it's her, like maybe it's her coming back when she's swinging from the bridge. I don't know, but it's weird.
Hey, how close? Charlotte and Zandy, how close? Okay, are you guys to Auburn, the town of Auburn?
Pretty close.
Oh,
I take 49, take 49 and just zip right there.
Okay.
30 miles, but yeah.
You guys need to probably hook up and do Green Valley Vortex.
Oh yeah, that'd be something.
I was just gonna say, Charlotte and Phil should do a documentary together. What do you think, Phil? That's what I was thinking about, man. What would it be, and how do you probably collect some hellified paranormal evidence because you're not like, you're not gonna be easy fooled. Like you look at everything like cerebral. So I think it would be some good shit.
I think other than writing and editing, I wouldn't be much use because I'm 3,500 miles away. I'm in Florida.
Yeah, unless we did a Zoom meeting.
But I could do writing and editing from a distance for sure.
Hey, let me tell you, Charlotte, this dude is he's the writer of all seasons. Super, the lyrics. Just off top, contact the lyrics, man. He's a stone cold songwriter. I mean, myself, I'm a songwriter, but like I could sit, even though I've been doing, that guy really comes up with catchy stuff. So you might want to check that out too.
Absolutely, I will. Thank you.
Hey, I'm a songwriter too. Here's the song I wrote.
I believe it.
Cigarettes and whiskey and wild women.
Yeah.
Oh my
That works.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, Bob.
I heard about you being stationed in Tahiti. I know what you're saying, buddy. I got you.
Hey, yeah, whoever does another documentary, I mean, he could do like a Zoom meeting with Nadine or with you or with me or whatever. And there's a lot of haunted places where he's living at in Florida. I mean, there's some.
Really, yeah, there's a lot. That's some weird places out there.
Hell, we got to go down there and see Phil get the warm weather and just go do some special shit. Go get a hotel and go down there and go visit Phil and do some real shit.
I got a guest bedroom. Come on down,
man.
I'm 3 blocks from the beach, and I live on the Murder River.
I feel like, see ya.
Oh my god, that ain't so.
Yeah, it's Matanzas River means murder river.
Oh
You
my
know,
god.
okay, I'm not a psychic, but I know that Charlotte's been to Preston Castle.
I have, yes, twice.
So yeah, I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. Did you find anything at Preston Castle?
I had weird experiences happen to me there. We did get some good EVPs out of there, but it was I went to a conference there. Gloria Young was putting the conference on, and I'd never seen a pyrac, an industrial pyrac in my life. Didn't know what they were, and I always had a thing for blueberry pies as a kid. I love blueberry pies, so I'm sitting there, when we're doing the EVP sessions and stuff, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I'm smelling blueberry pie. And I thought, where's that coming from? And then I look over there and I thought, what is that thing? And then that's when they told me it was a plate rack. So I had that experience in there. And I got pushed down the stairs once. The place that really creeped me out in that place was the infirmary, because all those beds were in there. I was at the command center. I set up a command center, a regular investigation tour thing. And I was in there in the dark. I don't do the dark, you guys. I'm afraid of the dark. Ghost hunter that's afraid of the dark. And so that's the only way I got around it is because I was behind the camera with the infrared on the camera. I could just walk around and see everything. It didn't bother me. And so I'm sitting there and I could hear footsteps coming up behind me. Something was walking up behind me in the dark. And I went and bought a remote control car that had infrared camera on it. Because you can't step down everywhere there, right? You can't step down everywhere there. So you can send the car in because it's light. So so I would rig everything. I set the car down the hallway. Didn't pick up anything, but I could definitely hear footsteps coming towards me. Creepy place.
Charlotte, I'm going to use my psychic powers here. I think that California Haunts went to the Ion Hotel.
Yes. Several times, yeah.
Ion Hotel.
That's an happening place over there, boy.
Okay, did you check out the Black Rose?
Yeah, the black on the wall, yeah. The black rose that's on the wall, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, they said that people have tried to wash it off.
Yeah.
Or paint over it, and it still comes back and appears. And the reason why is because a prostitute by the name of the Black Rose, that was her nickname, either committed suicide or one of her Johns, one of her lovers, found out she was out having an affair and he killed her. So she makes her presence known with the Black Rose. That
Black Rose, yeah.
Yeah. And Zandine, you saw the Black Rose?
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. Charlotte, did you see the Black Rose?
I did, yeah.
Okay, all right.
I love that place. Love to go to Murphy's Hotel. Especially now since they remodeled.
We did an episode on that. I got a show, Paranormal Soul Brother, the first season. Me and Paul, we went up there and did it. We got some good EVPs. It was an interesting, just bam, bam, bam. Pretty much.
You need a lot of in there, and we've also had one. We were doing a conference, and we had one mock the voice of one of my psychic husbands. It scared me. How you get those death calls or whatever? There's something's wrong. And this was during a 2 a.m. EVP session. I said, you better call your husband because she went, I love you so and so, and then you hear the ghost go, I love you too, but it was her husband's voice.
Wow.
But we've had a lot of stuff happen at that place. I've had investigators go into Mark Twain Ballroom and come out throwing up. They've been so overwhelmed by stuff in there.
The most, I'd say, I wouldn't say the most haunted, but the most crazy activity. Paul, do you remember Yvonne's address, her actual house address? Because she moved from that place that we did the investigation. She's moved from there, and I went to a new place. But this place that I told you had the orbs, they also had UFOs. I'm talking about, when I say ground level, these things were like treetop level, sitting there for long periods of the time, then moving, darting, not just the straight line stuff, flashing on and off. She had the handprints, she'd get out the shower, it'd be a handprint with only 4 fingers, but a thumb on the towel. Scary. So then she'd have Russian voices, backwards talking, electronic stuff, talking about her son, calling her son's name out. She had the orbs that were moving things. The apparition she had, oh my God, there's this one where the guy's no shirt on, but it looks almost like a skeleton, but he's like 7 feet because his head is up to the ceiling. And you could see that he has the kind of Frankenstein bone structure. He just looked really famished, but he still was big. And then she had another one by the water heater where it looked like a guy in a down jacket and a beanie, like a baseball cap almost, more modern. But she kept saying she was having this stuff, but she had a lot of stuff going on at one house, So I think it drove her crazy because even Paul was like, you know what, man, But it turned out, it was a lot of footage that came from there. And then she moved, and it stopped for a little while. but then she had some other stuff. You know, she had that succubus thing going on too, I believe. Or so.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What's your most haunted place that had the most, or just like is that the one?
You asking Paul?
Oh, well, you're
I
asking
think
me?
it's you.
Anybody, and
Oh, anybody.
Yeah, wait, I okay. Out of all the investigations, I've been on 2,500 investigations, and the most haunted place I ever went to was the Tower of London in London. But there was this one house in Citrus Heights that was even more haunted than the Tower of London, and it's something that I remember just like it happened yesterday. I had 15 scouts, which are paranormal investigators in training. I put five in one room, five in another room, five in another room. Well, 10 of them in two rooms were falling asleep because nothing was happening. The other five in this one bedroom, you can hear a little girl giggling. I go, holy cow. I said, do you hear that girl giggling? They go, yeah, we're filming it. And I said, she's right on the corner of this bed, but I can't see her. So I put my head down and I go, hello. And she goes, hello. I go, shit. I go, there's a fucking ghost at the corner of this bed. I said, get everybody in here. So we had a seance and we did a seance and the walls sounded like they were ripping apart, something out like Hellraiser with the Cenobites coming through the walls, pounding on the walls. Boom, 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 boom. Everybody, all 15 are running out the fucking door. Remember, these are paranormal investigators in training. They're running out the fucking door. And I said, okay, you guys, we need to get back in here. This is fucking a breakthrough. I said, we got to find out what's going on. So we do it again. We put three walkie talkies on the floor and we're calling on the spirit and everything. And one of the walkie talkie turns on and is yelling. It's a man's voice, and he says, "Get out!" Well, they're all running out the door again. The occupant looks at me and she goes, "Paul, I have to live here." She goes, "Please send them home." I said, "I will. I'm very sorry." And she goes, "I'll tell you what, you can spend the night in that bedroom by yourself." I go, "Yeah, right on." So I sent them all out there. I go into the bedroom. They had a video camera going, and I fall asleep. You can hear me snoring. And there's a woman's voice going, "Paul, Paul, Paul." And there's a little child at the foot of the bed moaning and crying. And there's a man's voice and it's mumbling. And I slept through the whole thing. And then the investigator, that lady investigator, I said, I need that footage, I got to show everybody. And she goes, no, no, I'm keeping it, blah, blah, blah. I go, oh my God, are you kidding? She thought she was going to make $1 million from it. But that's the case I remember the
I
most.
think with me, there's really three. I like the Murphy's Hotel. To me, is if it was Disneyland, that would be an e-ticket, right? Like the old days. Um, I Woodland Opera House. I hate to say it's always performed well, but they always come out when we're there. And that Arbuckle House has to be pretty much up there with what we're
Okay.
on there. But there's the other story I have, and Paul was mentioning falling asleep. You get to a certain part in like 3, 4 in the morning when you are giddy because you're so tired. And we were doing this investigation in Rosemont, and this lady had this black cat on her bed, and we're doing an EVP session. And so, we're talking back and forth, the EVP session. Anyway, so I play it back, and this is being tired. My investigator's sitting there, and I hear this voice come on, and it's a real voice, almost a Betty Boop kind, just a little like a little girl's voice, a little sorry, just a little girl's voice, and it says, "I just want some attention." Real high pitch like that. And I looked at the cat, and I looked at my investigator. I said, "Do you think it's the cat?" Because I mean, because you're tired anyway. But just because the cat was there, it makes you wonder. Not that the cat could probably talk, but I'm just saying, is that just the way the voice sounds? It actually would sound like a cat if it was talking. But it turned out to be a little girl stuck in the house.
I almost quit being a paranormal investigator before the house in Citrus Heights because I mean, sure, I saw the EVPs and all this other stuff,
Yeah.
but I said, and there's no proof here that there's an afterlife. I'm starting to not believe it. And the house in Citrus Heights made me a believer. And I went crazy because I wanted that same experience. And I never found that experience again, only in that one house. I mean, I've been to like the most haunted places. I've been to the bridge over River Kwai, very haunted. And still, there's nothing that really makes my blood going than that house in Citrus Heights. And I can't find that type of paranormal activity anymore.
I'm just going to put this out there. All the years doing this and seeing these groups in this town come and go, and these people that get all this evidence and all this, every place they go is haunted. That's not the case though. And it's like it's hard because people now are so into this because of TV that they'll believe it, and it's just like like you and I, when we go in, we're looking for the natural causes of this stuff too, because if you don't, it's a disservice, to your client. And like when I see somebody getting bunch of stuff like all the time, it makes you wonder what they're doing.
You want to know the nastiest investigation I ever went to?
Which one?
The nastiest investigation I did an investigation in the Bay Area, and supposedly a demon was haunting the house. We get in there, the owner, I see on the wall all kinds of brown things stuck on the wall. It turned out to be his shit.
So
Yeah.
this story, I knew the story was, oh my God. Oh my God. Sound like some demon.
I can't imagine.
I spent
Hey, listen, we need a dog whistle.
He goes, "Are you going to bless the house?"
No shit.
What's this?
Hey, hey, listen. Hey, Charlotte, you got to develop the dog whistle for ghosts. They talking about they got a dog whistle for UFOs. It's what
I'm
if
gonna do it
166 hertz? Yeah, and 783 Schumann resonance. Yeah, whatever.
I've actually got a tech guy that makes us equipment sometimes, occasionally.
Charlotte, how long would you have stayed in that house?
I want to stay the night to get more and more.
I mean,
Yeah.
the house, the shit on the wall.
Oh, that one? No, that was not what it was. That would have been the
You,
end
you
of
know
that.
what Brian, you know what Brian Cano said, and Phil, you remember when we were talking to Brian Cano? Remember he said that, hey, listen, I see it, I got choice, I'm scared, but I'm an investigator, and no way am I gonna like pass up on the chance to get footage, so I have no choice but to stay there, even though whether I'm scared or not. How he explained it. Remember when he's talking to us, Phil, what he said?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. But if you're running into something where the guy deliberately put crap on the walls, we did a case up in San Francisco where we caught people trying to fool us.
Oh,
And I ran cameras all over this house, and we were starting the investigation. Got done. Nothing really happened. Put everything away, and I was running a camera in there. I don't know if it was their bumpus room or what the heck it was. It had a table in there and like some shelving with books. And we see the son come out. I don't think he realized the camera was on. We see him come out, and you see him move this cord and opens this door and rigs it. And then he goes out. And then about 5 minutes later, you see the door shut by itself where he had rigged it.
hey,
Yeah.
you just, oh my God, you just got me thinking about San Francisco. We had a case in San Francisco that I took my investigators to. They were in there like for 5 minutes and they all stepped outside. And I said, "You guys are not coming in?" They go, "Hell no." And the reason why we went into the house, and Phil, if you ever become a paranormal investigator, this is kind of shit that you might
I was
see.
born and raised there. Wait a minute. What are you gonna say about my city? I was born and raised there. Go ahead.
Okay, so we go into the apartment, cockroaches everywhere.
God.
I put my holy water on the kitchen cabinet, and the cockroaches were going to my holy water because they were thirsty. And I didn't want to put my equipment down because the cockroaches would have went into my bag and I would have brought them back to the house.
Yeah, of course.
That wasn't the end of it. The two ladies that lived there, were obese. I mean, they were huge. I mean, the size of of an elephant in a circus. I mean, they were big, and there was posters on the
Like,
walls of the two ladies. Come to find out, they were exotic dancers and they were obese, and they were looking at me. They go, Paul. They said some men like big women. I go, okay. So it's like, okay, how can I get my ass out of
they
here?
do.
And okay, that's the apartment was filled with cats. And I found three dead cats by the hallway. I
Wow.
said, okay, that's enough. I'm out of here. They go, aren't you going to do the investigation and aren't you going to bless the house? Again, the middle finger went up. No, hell,
What you know, you bring up there's a point I thought of when you're talking about these filthy houses, though, is that the whole thing about the unclean spirits, and oftentimes Satan himself being depicted as the most foul.
Yeah.
You know, literally being depicted as you know, shit, feces, that type of thing.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
what, you know,
Wow.
not that you want to hang around that kind of thing, but wouldn't it be possible that if it were a true possession, that, you know, it would be a cesspool?
yeah, yes, absolutely. Berkeley, we did an investigation in Berkeley, demonic. Okay, the guy was a hoarder. We're over there like a little maze to get here to there. They took out the toilet out of the bathroom and placed it in the garage. And off in the corner is where they were doing their crap. A nice weekend for them. A weekend, they would go to the local little gas station so they can utilize the bathroom. And we just look at it. We're going, we're at it. They go, we're going to go to the gas station so you can so, so you can do a number two. We're out of here. Yeah, that's another one we had. We had some crazy ones. I mean, oh my God, Zandine, he experienced one of them, and that was in Pleasanton. That guy was a nut. So
But
yeah,
the thing about him, though, the thing about him is he had a size can of beer that I've never seen in my life. I don't know where the hell he got that. But back to the documentaries, Phil, man, like we gotta stay on task about the documentaries. This is almost it must be almost time. Man, is there anything about documentaries, man, that like because you guys were putting down the knowledge and we got off sidetracked, man. I'm so crazy.
Well, I I've been wanting to do one to see, you know, for to follow up the other two I've done. You know, I did a lot of recordings of my grandfather before he died, but that's more of a personal project. But to be honest with you, as soon as I hit Florida 4 years ago, you know, my house flooded three times in 4 years, so I kind of got bombarded with natural catastrophes, natural disasters that have sidetracked me from doing it. But otherwise, I still have my equipment, and I want to. The other thing is, you know, I'm sure Charlotte can attest to this, is that when you want to take on a topic, you almost have to fall in love with it.
Yeah.
You know, because you're about to devote the amount of time. People don't realize the amount of time you can, you know, you can say it. You can say, oh, I'm gonna throw 30,000 hours into something. Or I'm gonna throw, you know, a couple hundred hours, you know, to put even on the light side of things into something. But unless you're actually sitting there doing it or going out and gathering information, gathering, you know, B-roll even, you don't realize the amount of your life that can be taken up by a project like this.
Yeah.
So it's you that can be the hardest thing. It's like, okay, we got to settle on a topic, and then you have to narrow your focus, because if you take too much of a broad spectrum, oh, I want to put this in it, and put this in it, and put this in it, put this in it. Next thing you know, you've got the Civil War, you know, and it's like a 28, you know, day,
Yeah.
you know, documentary. When really you need to get down to, if anybody's ever going to watch it, you want to do 30 minutes or less in the independent format.
Yeah.
And honestly, you want to do 10 minutes if you really want the
Yeah.
biggest audience, because most film festivals, and I'm sure Charlotte knows out there, are 10-minute film festivals.
Well,
You
the
know,
other thing with work in paranormal too video, it's not only a case of really having to work hard to get footage out of the field because you got batteries draining, but you may have a ghost like the one at the Woodland Opera House where I did the first show for California Haunts with that other team, where something comes over, like that manager, whoever that is, it doesn't want you to complete it. I
Yeah.
had nothing but problems, with the equipment. Nothing, everything had gone wrong with that, And and in fact, I even stood up one time to go grab something to drink, and all because at that time we were using high 8 tape, back in the old days, and I had like 6 high 8 tapes stacked up, and as soon as I got up and moved back out of the chair, the high 8 tape went flying across the room where somebody had knocked it down. So I had nothing but trouble getting that out. Turned out really good when I had it done. It took forever. So that's stuff you got to think about too with the paranormal ones, is because sometimes these ghosts don't want you putting that stuff out there.
That's true. I like the case that the Arbuckle case that we talked about.
Oh yeah, that one.
An hour ago or whatever. And I know we got to wrap this up because my dogs are going. But that Arbuckle case, just the fact that both of you described it as pure evil, both of you described it as cases that you wish you could run into things that were. You both agreed it was not only legitimate, but it was almost once in a lifetime type cases that you rarely ever come across. That would be something to really sink your teeth into for a documentary. If you could gain access again, if you could get the footage, if you could get interviews to go along with them, I would love to take part in something like that.
That case was something. And also, I grew up Catholic. So, like I said, Paul, when I got that EVP and I heard that voice say, "Gabriel, watch out," my eyes got like saucers, and I just went, "Okay, out, let's go."
And as far as Zandine's knowledge of the demons, like I was talking about the filthy, the whole filth thing behind it. I'd love to, have Zandine do a lot of research and see, if you could actually pinpoint the potential demon that's doing the possession there, or at least speculate as to, which pantheon, this demon belongs to. Try to narrow it down. I think that could make a hell of a documentary.
I agree with him, and I've done my research on demons as well. Because you have your highest level demons, and then it goes down to different levels of what you're dealing with, and you have to figure out what you're dealing with before you can really take care of business. Like the one that scratched me, that wasn't the top line. That was not a top line. That was a lower line demon, but it was enough where it could scratch me. So.
And I know it's almost time to call it quits, but out of 2,500 investigations, I've only seen 4 full body apparitions. So it's a rarity. It is very rare.
I feel so much better talking to you like that, because that's what I was saying about these other teams that claim they're seeing these apparitions. You don't see them all the time. I mean, all the time we get more EVPs than we do anything else.
You're right. And thank God for those. Thank God for EVPs, though.
Yeah.
I'm not a psychic and I'm not a sensitive. The only thing I'm sensitive to is if people call me names. So that's about it. And that lady with the dead cats and all the cats run around her apartment and stuff like that. Okay. One of my investigators, they called the SPCA on her, and she was pissed. She called me. She goes, "Did you call the S?" I said, "I didn't do it," but I said I would have done it. But one of my investigators did, because there was 4 cats dead in your hallway.
Right. The white witch gave me those 2 cats. I still have them. Remember when we went out by the nuclear facility? These are nuclear cats. They're pretty special, but I took them home that day. I still have them.
Zandy, how many cats do you have?
In the house I have 3. Outside I have 3. So.
Oh, that's cool. That's
okay. I have 3. Yeah, I have 3, and I also have a dog. I mean,
Oh, okay.
I love my animals.
We're all animals.
But one I got one that just came. Macchiato. I call him Machi. He's really cute. He couldn't really handle being outside. He was like a really nice kitty, but I don't know if the family that had him. I saw him on Facebook and I said, "Hey, he's down here," and they're like, "Oh, well, we'll come get him. We'll come get him," and then they never did. And then he started loving it. And I was feeding him. He started, loving me, and I started. So it's that I said one more. There we go.
Oh, there is a beautiful
There
cat.
we go, kitty.
That is a
A friend of
beautiful.
mine found the rat terrier that passed away last November. A friend of mine found him wandering down J Street. And he jumped in his car. But here's where an animal ticks you, right? So I'm sitting in my office back here going over evidence, and here comes this dog running down the hallway, looked at me, jumped in my lap, and it gave me a lick right here. Sucker. You know? I mean, right then and there, I was just like, okay, you're not going anywhere. And the dog just must have saw me and thought, sucker, got me up there. That was it.
Speaking of dogs, Phil, your dogs, I know, going crazy, huh? I know, Phil, your dogs are going up, huh?
They're actually being really good right now, but yeah, it's about last call. I gotta let them out before they.
I, I have to walk mine. Charlotte, it was so wonderful having you. You were a blast to interview.
Thank you, Paul.
And
We'll have to get together, you and I.
oh yeah, yeah. And Phil, when he usually gets these interviews up in a couple of days.
Okay, that's cool.
I say Phil Zandine, we would counter as a heavy hitter, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can throw it up fast if you want.
We'll
Well,
throw it
she definitely, like we get to go back and good, just good stories, good information, and yeah, I mean that's how it. I mean, I had read your bio and stuff. Yeah, I've been doing it 25 years, and that you also did Crime Reporter and different stuff. I didn't get the chance to ask you, but next time.
Yeah, sure, next time.
Oh yeah, fantastic. Okay, I will.
Let's get you on my show.
I'll definitely see.
Let's get you on my show, Paul.
Oh, that'd be great. Was it?
Yeah.
That'd be great. Oh, there we go. There we go.
Hey, what's up, man? Hey. Cutie pie.
I've got more than one.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
All right. It's great meeting you,
Have a good night,
Charlotte.
Charlotte.
All right.
Have a great night.
Have a good one, everybody.